So I just thought I'd show you what happens when you don't treat your metal. So the last video you would have seen that I was treating this side, and the whole side now is done, but I haven't done the roof, and it's been a few days, probably 4 days, and that's the difference. So this is where I was heating it up with the oxy, and then you can see here the lead, and then this area here is just surface rust where I've had the oxy on it, and even the other areas that have been paint stripped, and all through here it's all starting to rust because it's not treated. So that's the difference it makes. People always say, how do I keep it clean? You just got to treat it and it'll look after you. Righto, so it's pretty much time to get this plenum back on now. So Darren's done a really good job of that. So that's been bare metalled for nearly a month now. So I've just gone over this morning with that dioxidine and redone that to make sure that there's no surface rust, and it's amazing just how much it changes colour. And some of those deeper areas, pretty clean. I mean, you could probably spend a little bit more time, but because this particular product is designed to go over even rusty metal, so this is it here, so it's POR 15, paint directly over rust. So obviously we're trying to avoid that, but we're using it over bare metal, and it's designed to go on with no primer. And the reason we've masked it up is we don't want it out here where the plenum's only going to come to this point. I don't want it out here where I'm going to paint with normal paint. So we just keep it to the insides, and we'll get that painted and we'll show you how that goes on. So we just brush it on. And a little tip, we've been caught before, this stuff's so dries so hard that if you get paint on the lid and put the lid back on, I can guarantee you won't get it back off, because we've tried, and you end up putting a hole in it and putting the paint in a different tin. It's that goes that hard. So this is the underside of that now. So you've seen in the last episode welding all these bits back on. So Darren's just gone along and cleaned the back of these off, because if that sits up, when you go to put your wipers on, it won't sit down flush. And you know, we've learnt that from experience because we've been caught before. So that's all in that Vibrance epoxy urethane primer. And we've scuffed that up with some 240 just to make sure it's got some grip, and we'll put that POR on there as well. And then the next stage, when we go to put it on, we'll just explain that process as well. Now this stuff's amazing that it seems to self-level, but you don't want to put too much on in the first go because it will run, but it's quite, it almost looks like you've sprayed it even though you brush it on. I don't know that we've ever had to double coat it. It seems to just flatten out and cover. No pressure, Picasso. Right, so I've got Darren back for a couple of days again this week. Now, I've already showed you we've painted the inside of this, so he's put it on this morning, and what he's been doing is just going through with a little wire brush and cleaning these holes out so that the spot weld, when he goes to plug those, he can do that. So it's pretty much a worn out one there on the drill. Just grab hold of that, Darren, and just show him what we're doing with that. So I've got him to leave a couple so we can film it. So I've got to keep slowing him down because he's pretty quick. Righto. So it's pretty much as simple as that, and the idea now is we've got nice clean metal to run our weld on, but we're minimising how much of the paint we're taking off. So as I said last week, I think when you weld this POR, around this POR 15, it just seems to liquefy and then dry back out again, which is a bonus. But today's more about, I've come out to have a quick look at what he's up to, and I've spotted this little round thing here really comes from a hangover from the XB, because the XB has got the lower section comes out as well. So I said to him, maybe we better cut that off before you go and weld that on. And then, as per usual, I've noticed this little bit here where it doesn't quite cover, and I'm thinking maybe we need to weld that up as well. And of course, if you're going to do that, this is the problem with modifying vehicles, is it snowballs, because over here there's a whole big piece missing right across there. So I've decided to make the call. Fortunately, we haven't started welding it back on, but I'm going to add a bit of steel to those, or Darren's going to add a bit of steel to those, because I want a factory look, but I want it to be clean. And I did this with Cormint. So things like these here, where we've got the little bit of steel hanging out, I'll trim that off, and I'll knock these down, and I'll run around here and clean it up. So it'll look factory, but it'll look cleaner and nicer than factory. So sometimes you got to make the call and decide that, you know what, even though I've painted it, I'm going to sand that off, weld the edge up, put some more paint on it, lose half a day, but end up with the result. And it's always little things you miss, like the edge of that, we need to straighten that up, and then we'll be good to go to weld it on. So sometimes you just got to make the decision that you want to make the change, and it's easier now than to put it on and then try and add the steel in after, and then you lose the benefit of having all that stuff painted on the inside. Righto, so now I've held things up. I've actually welded those bits in. I'm pretty much ready now to put it on. So just got some Sika. So it's a fast curing automotive sealant, number 227. So over the years we've found that to work really well, and what we do is put a bead along the front edge, because that's where they tend to want to rot out. So you've got to keep it sort of back a little bit from where the welding's going to be. And as you would imagine, when this gets welded, some of this will get toasted a bit, but I think it's a way better option to have it sealed than just to leave it open.
Come down here.
Oh, no. Just for the front. So the process here that I would use, I don't know which way Darren's going to go, but I'd start in the middle and start working my way to the outside so that you keep it nice and tight, because things tend to want to move around a bit and we want to try and keep it nice and tight. And I would think we'll probably do across the bottom first. Righto, so we've just paint stripped that side now, same as the other side, not a lot of rust, but there's a little bit in the bottom there. So what I've done is I've just used some normal masking tape and made a little dam, and I'm going to take some of this rust gel. So I said I had some coming. So this is a new drum. So rust remover from Rusted Solutions. And I'll put that in there and leave it overnight, and then I'll show you the results when we get it back. So we're up on the top of the roof now, and those big areas, that what I had left over, the old stuff, got most of that out of there. So unfortunately I didn't film that because I didn't think it'd take it out. But this area here I haven't touched, so I'm going to, pretty much all rust spots. So I'll put some of the gel on and we'll have a look in the morning and see what that looks like. So that's been overnight, so probably about 12 hours, probably 16 hours, and most of what the brown you can see is actually the residue from the gel. So it'll be interesting to see with the clean now how that comes up. So all I've done there now is wipe that with some water. I'm just going to put a wire wheel in a wire wheel in the drill to take that little blackness away, and I reckon it'll go. So the main reason I'm showing you this is that I'm trying to do this as if you were doing it at home, and if this was a job that we were doing for a customer, it would have went out to blast. But there are other alternatives, and because this is my own car, I've chosen that I'm going to try and do it here the way we used to do it when I was in Broken Hill, and I think it's not a bad way to go. You can just tinker away on a Friday night at home rather than have to send it out and spend the money and do it yourself. Righto, so this stuff's water soluble, so we've just rubbed it all over with a Scotch-Brite with its own sort of juices, and now that's just a wet rag, If we have a look down here, where all this really deep rust was, just with the water you can see that getting 90% of that out. And what I'm going to do now is just run a light wire wheel over that, and I'll show you that in a second. Get all this off first. Now it's interesting to see on the other side where I've wiped that off, but I didn't blow it dry, just how much it's starting to rust straight away, surface rust. I don't know what's in this product, but we've obviously now got very clean metal, which means as soon as the air gets to it, it's going to rust. So I might just blow that off. So I bought this wire wheel, nice soft wire wheel, and I bought it to go on a grinder, but I find that when you put them on the grinder the speed's a bit much, so I'm just going to put it on my buff because it's variable speed and I can slow it right down. And I've got Darren on the camera, so I'll get him to jump up here with me. And you can see here the really deep pits there with the black in it. I haven't done this before, but I'm guessing this is going to take that out. Pretty much like that. So there's a couple of little tiny bits there, I'll give a bit more. Now if we find somewhere, a couple of spots there, quite deep. So they might need just a little bit more or a bit of a pick or something. But I'm pretty happy with that result. And what I do now is I'll put a LED torch behind that to make sure there's no pinholes, because a couple of those look quite deep. But I'm not planning on welding it unless I can see light, because I'm not going to work it anymore, so we should be able to seal it up and paint it. So Darren's finished that up now with a brand new 40 grit, just to flatten it out. Now, because I'm not doing restoration as such, we haven't worried too much about the way that cuts into the metal, because I'm going to knock it around a bit and then fill it. So it'll still have a factory look, but it'll be a little bit cleaner than they would normally be. So while I've got Darren here this week, taking the opportunity to get this car now into the rotisserie. So we made these brackets a long time ago to be able to, you know, change over what you're mounting to and not chop up the main part of the rotisserie. So the fact that I'm not planning on doing any more full builds, I decided that we'd just cut the sedan ones off of these, and he's made up a new plate to bolt in all 3 bolt holes there, out of a decent bit of plate. So we'll bolt that on the back, and then up the front it's obviously the same as a coupe or a sedan, so we're able to utilise the ones we've always had. So these are the brackets that go on and bolt onto the front bumper bar mounts, and the reason that's got the notch in it is we did that gold thing with the turbos, and we had the engine bay being modified, so we had to cut that in. But to go on a normal sedan or a coupe or a van, that doesn't need to be cut out, and then that just bolts onto this part. And I thought thought it was interesting. I just give this a quick wire wheel before we go to bolt things on. I was going to show you at some point, so I'll show you now, is that this car's obviously had a hit in the front. And I know that for a couple of reasons, and this just reinforces it. There's obviously these nuts, you know, came loose, so they've bronzed those in. But the radiator support panel is an XB radiator support panel. And then it's had these brackets here and here welded on. And I don't know whether that was because they used a second-hand one or whether they couldn't get one at the time. And I don't know how long ago it had the accident, but I mentioned before that this main structure had gone back just enough to put some kinks and things in here that we've now repaired. And I noticed that this inner skirt's got the part number label, a little bit of that left as well. So they obviously replaced this skirt, and then there's a little bit of welding on here that doesn't look original. So I don't know whether this was replaced or just this one, because this has still got the markings on it from the factory back here. So I'd pressure cleaned this car when I first got it just to get all the dust and stuff on it, off it, to see what I had. So it's just interesting, you know, every car's got a story to tell, but we can see through here where these welds aren't factory, and the same across here, these aren't factory where they've put that radiator support on. And then they would have had to drill some extra holes and all in that radiator support. So that's just interesting in itself. And then I noticed as well that this hole here inside, they're always a bit rough, but this one to me looks like it's been pushed back. So I'm just wondering whether the whole motor gearbox got a push as well at the same time. And on the firewall, there's a little bit of a telltale right in the middle that it looks like it's got a little bit of filler in there. So maybe the whole motor got pushed back. Must have just knocked it off the mounts, because all of the cross member and all is really good. And it did have a factory, that's what they call an out backpack. So it had a factory sump guard that joins the front cross member to the middle one as well. So interesting times. So we're going to get it in the rotisserie so I can keep progressing along with getting it all cleaned up. So that's it up in the air now. So we're going to we had a bit of a look. Doesn't look too bad. There's a couple of sort of dodgy looking bits here where I think when whoever took this car to auction picked it up with a forklift, because it had a few marks on the sills and things, and potentially if a forklift was run through here it probably picked it up from there. But other than that, it's in extremely good condition. And I had pressure cleaned it on the hoist when it was complete. And a lot of what we're looking at now is brown dust and brown paint, and not necessarily rust, but there is some rust. And I was talking earlier about that firewall, so it looks like that's definitely had a hit there and a bit of panel beating. So we'll fix that up. But like I say, the cross member all looks very straight and into where it's meant to be, so structurally I think they fixed it up properly. I have got a plan out of the factory workshop manual that actually gives you some dimensions and things. I may do that, but I always find it quite funny that they talk about the tolerance are up to 1/2 inch. So it's almost like, is it worth measuring? But anyhow, what we're going to do now, or what Darren's going to do, is he's just sanded down there to find those spot welds. We're going to take that spare wheel frame off of there, because I'm going to run a wind up one, because I'm going to run a full piece back bumper. So then once you put the bumper on, you can't get your tyre in. So we'll get rid of that. Have a look how nice it is in there. Righto, so I'll let him make some noise again and get back into it. Just like that, if you know what you're doing. I must have had a fresh spot welder when I did this one, because every time we go to take something off it, the spots are really nice and neat and they drill out really good. So all of a sudden now we've got a whole heap of room under there. So that's amazing, that'll all come out way better than we thought. We thought we might have had to cut that out. So I'll make sure, 100% sure that I'm not going to need that, and then that can go to a new home, I imagine. Righto, so as I've already showed you, you can see where this thing's had a few hits. So here, where the gearbox has come back and hit the floor, and then the firewall up here's been hammered up. There's a bit of damage there, so it's obvious the engine come back a fair way. So what I've got here is the factory workshop manual from Ford from 40 years ago, and this particular picture here shows all the dimensions for the underside of the car. So what Darren and I are in the process of doing is just checking what we've got against what the book says. But before I even do that, if you have a look at this arm here which holds the gearbox, it's sitting up a bit, and this one's straight, this one's not quite straight with this rail. So when we measure the 2 points that the factory give us from here to here, we're about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters different on here to what the book says. But then what we've just picked up is this area here is quite heavily damaged. So I'd say when the front was hit, this all came back, this torque box came back and crushed this area. Now it looks like it's had a torque box put on it, but they haven't repaired that before they put it back on because it's out of sight. So it should be square like that one. And as you can see, it goes straight back. So Darren and I have just been looking at it. We'll probably red hot all of this here and push it back into shape. It's not going to affect the way the car operates, so I'm not overly concerned, but I just like to tidy it up and make it look a bit nicer. Now, all of these holes here that we often wonder what they're for, these are the jig holes from when they're manufactured. So these are the holes that Ford have given us in there. So there's one at the front that Darren's got, and another one here. So that's measuring 8 feet 10.5, maybe a little bit more. If we go the other way, we're 8 foot 10 and maybe 3/4. So there's about 1/4 inch or 5 mil variation. Now in the book, Ford tell you that the variation can be up to 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters, which is all pretty crazy, but I'm comfortable that with the diagonals, we've done 2 different diagonals, that the car's pretty close, and all the panels did fit it. So I don't believe we need to do anything about putting it in a jig because it measures up okay. So there's a lot of other measurements in here that you can utilise, where you can do diagonals across the engine bay, the full length that we've just done. And the other one we did do was from this point here up to this point. And once again, that came in within 5 mil, and I believe that's because this has got to go down 5. So we're going to bend that one down, we'll fix the floors up, and we'll fix this bit under here, and then we should be all ready to go. And then we'll just start thinking about cleaning it up. So that pretty much brings us up to where we're at with the panel van. So the van's always meant to be the filler, so it's going to fit in between the other things we're doing, and I keep talking about we're going to have an announcement. So I can tell you today that what's going to happen, and it's going to put this on the back burner, is we're actually going to paint a muscle car. Now, Perry's Garage in Canberra have been working on a muscle car for probably 2 years now, and they've completely reskinned that car with all new panels. So it's going to come here in bare metal. We're going to go through the process where we'll treat all of those panels. I'll do a little bit of straightening and make sure it's 100% ready. And then we're going to work through the processes of epoxy, the primers, spray guns, masking, you name it, between now and the end of the year. So it'll be 13 episodes plus an introduction. I've teamed up again with PPG. So they're supporting what we're doing. Obviously we'll be using all their products and also the Mirka products. and we'll work through the process to paint that, show you how we believe it should be done, and then have that finished car as a rolling shell at Summernats on the PPG stand. So I'm really looking forward to doing it, working with the Perrys again on another car, and being able to bring to you the process to do the car. Now the main thing about it is it's going to be like a street car. It's not going to be the full-on thing like we did with the last one with Boss XC. The plan is to get it out of the booth, give it a light cut and a polish, not all of this chopping back and getting it all done in the clear. So we'll actually be more like what you'd get out of a normal panel shop, or we may even be able to do at home. So I'm looking forward to bringing that to you, and the first episode will be in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm going to film this weekend at Perry's garage, and then we will go into the process of painting the car. So looking forward to that. The panel van, I'll see what time I've got between shooting shows and doing the muscle car, and anytime we've got any information, we'll be able to bring that to you and show you that as well. So thanks for joining us.